Dr. Jean Augustine is the first African-Canadian woman to be elected to the House of Commons. She was elected in the riding of Etobicoke Lakeshore in 1993 and sat in Parliament until the year 2000. During this time, she served as Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister, Minister of State, and Deputy Speaker. In 2007, Dr. Augustine was nominated by the Government of Ontario as Fairness Commissioner, a position created to advocate for Canadians with foreign credentials. She retired from this position in March 2015. Dr. Augustine led the motion that allowed for the placement of the famous 5 statue on Parliament Hill in Ottawa, as well as the motion that created Black History Month in Canada. Dr. Augustine has received Honorary Doctor of Laws degrees from 7 universities, and many institutions have been named in her honor. Please welcome Dr. Jean Augustine.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much. I want to begin by acknowledging that I am a visitor on the land of Indigenous peoples, and that I am grateful for that opportunity. Sohail and Rotarians, His Worship, Regional Councillor, and all officials who are here present, I greet you this afternoon, and I want to say how pleased I am to be invited to this DISCON Rotary District 7080 conference. I sent a note to someone a little while ago and I said, I came to a conference and a picnic showed up. I was so pleased to have had the opportunity to join you at Kelso Park because it is a place I have not been for a long, long time. It's beautiful, it's a gem, and it is one part of this region that we can all be pleased and proud of. And I think as the leaves change on the trees, I think we begin to see the beauty of nature and we recognize how good things are for us. Let me begin then by talking about my coming to Canada, my having been in Canada over the last 64 years, and that I've had the opportunity to travel the world, and yet there is no place that I'd rather be or no place that I want to live but in Canada. And I'm saying this because I just returned from Mongolia and the Gobi Desert. And I can tell you that there are parts of this world that are so beautiful, but I think when we take that beauty, the culture, the music, the entertainment, and the way of life, and we contrast and compare that to Canada, I think we have the best of all worlds. I was born in Happy Hill, St. George's, Grenada. And Grenada is part of the Caribbean, is one of the Caribbean islands. It's a small island, but we always think that it's small, but it has produced great people, great minds, friendly people, and have an education system that's equal to anywhere. It was colonial. It was, at the same time, prepared the young people for a world that was bigger than Grenada was. When I was growing up there, we had no post-secondary education institutions. And so by after high school, one had to make a decision to go away to school, to go away if one wanted a profession or one wanted to do something that was different than the everyday thing on the island. I grew up in an extended family situation. My father died when I was 9 months old, and a grandmother kind of stepped in to help my mother and to raise 2 daughters. In those days, and I was born in 1937, so I just celebrated my 87th anniversary. "1937 was a very good year, but the period around 1937 was not really all that great for young women and girls. The families put together envelopes to send the young men away to school, and the girls were expected to be at home, to get married, to have children. For me, there were about 4 avenues for employment. I could be a nurse in one of the hospitals. I could be a teacher. I could work in the public service, or I can work in a department store. Those were the avenues for young women. At the same time, I had a grandmother who believed that her granddaughter was the smartest thing since sliced bread, that there was nothing that she couldn't do and nothing that could stop her from reaching her full potential. So when the boys were encouraged to go away to school, she was encouraging me to be the best that I can be. What occurred at the time in the 1950s, late 1950s, early 60s, was a program with Canada. Canada, after the war, as you know, was engaged after Marshall Plan and all of those things that are well known by older folks. Canada was very much engaged with the Caribbean and with Grenada and what were called the Windward Islands at the time, Grenada, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Dominica, in building schools and in encouraging full-time education for all children. They had moved out of that program and at the same time recognizing the high unemployment rate in the Caribbean, decided on a program that was called the Canada Caribbean Domestic Scheme. That scheme was really, or that program, was really to encourage young women, 18 and over, to come to Canada because Canadian women at the time were now returning into the workforce, needed household help, and that you would come to Canada, and if you signed up that you would work in a Canadian home for 1 year, then you will get landed immigrant status. Well, that was exactly what I was looking for, an opportunity to get a post-secondary education, to have an opportunity to come to Canada. And so I signed up that I will come to Canada, I'll work in the home of a Canadian family for 1 year, and then I will go on to post-secondary. I did. 1960 was the year. So this year I'm claiming that I've been in Canada for 64 years. When I came to Toronto, I worked with a family. The family had children that I had to, it was my responsibility. I think the word they used at the time was nanny, and to take care of the children to make sure they were in and out of school. And I ended up with one family who had one youngster, one small boy. I went on to university. I went on to ensure that the dream that what I had in my head as my dream, that I would fulfill that dream. And so I applied for Teachers College because I wanted to be a teacher. I thought it was a profession that I always felt that I had more or less I took that as my choice of occupation. Toronto in 1960, and those of you who were at the time, or who were as old as I am and followed the social and political progress, Toronto and Canada at the time was a different place than it is today. We had no Charter of Rights and Freedom. That didn't come till 1982 when we repatriated our Constitution and amended it with the Charter of Rights and Freedom. We had no human rights code, so that when bad things happened, you had nowhere to go and tell your story or get people to advocate for you. That didn't come till about 1962, 63. We had no Landlord and Tenant Act at the time. That didn't come until later. And so a landlord was able to say, it's for rent, yes, but we don't rent to you people. We had no police community relations at the time. Actually, at the time, to be a policeman, there were height and weight requirements. We had no school board talking to communities about their children or outreach into communities. And so there was just so much was missing in the system. At the same time, we were talking about Canada as a fair and a just and an equitable society. And yet, there were many who were looking at the society and saying, let me find ways to make the society more just, more fair, more inclusive. And so I joined with so many others as an advocate, calling on officials, calling on governments, calling on policymakers to make the necessary changes that would make life better for all. And if we were talking about a multicultural society, because we did examine the nature of Canadian society, we asked a question, are we just English and French? And we know that the call from various communities, we were not just English and French. The answers came back. We were multicultural, we were multiracial, we were multi-ethnic, we were multi-religious. So if we are a multicultural, multi-religious, multi-ethnic society, then we need to see policies, we need to see laws, we need to see ourselves represented everywhere in Canadian society. We had no faces on the television. We had no one reading the news that can serve as a model for the various and varying members of communities. And so the questions had to be asked. We have been very good in Canada at asking the questions and calling on communities to respond. When we wanted to find out what we needed to do in the issue of women, we had a commission that went around the country asking about the status and the situation of women in Canada. We've been able to work out methodologies and to make to policymakers and to engage policymakers. We were able to talk about things like equal pay for work of equal value. We were able to share with the rest of the world what we were doing in the area of policing, what we were doing in the area of education, and we were able to reach out across the world. Rotary has been very much engaged with the spread of what are the best in Canada. The volunteer work you do, the donations you make, the programs in the area of health that you see that are important nationally and internationally. Those are all the values that we as Canadians throw to the world. And so I went into Teachers College and started teaching. And of course, the curriculum that was given to us as teachers to teach showed nothing about indigenous peoples, land claims, agreements that were made with the Crown between the indigenous people and the Crown and the governments, taught nothing about nothing in those modules that we were teaching. Of course, when I looked for the issues around people of African descent, I knew that we were here since 1603, came on that expedition with Champlain up the river, and that there was a black man on that voyage in 1603. His name was Matthew da Costa. And so I know there has been a black presence in Canada since 1603. And yet it was not till 1993 that I was elected the first black woman to the Parliament of Canada. Prior to my election, there was Lincoln Alexander and Howard McCurdy. But by 1993, when I was elected, those two men had already left the Parliament of Canada. And so going through the education system, I waited my turn for vice principal, for supervisory officer. I worked with community organizations, and all those in Canadian society who are working to make this the diverse, fair, and inclusive society. There are really good people in Canada, and you are among the many good people in Canada who see the world and who recognize that each one of us has a responsibility to each other and to the world. And so I found those people. We use a word now, ally. And those people became allies. They were the ones who were pushing. They were the ones who were supporting. They were the ones who were saying and repeating in the boardrooms of the nation and in the halls where decisions are made, the issues that are important. So we saw legislation that spoke to those issues that we can put in categories. Issues around the home, issues in the marketplace, issues in the workplace, issues that refer to the individual's place in the society. And so we can reel off laws and legislation and policy directions that are made in those various areas. And it is the good people and the people of conscience and the organizations like Rotary and others who stand, who make sure that we continue to make the society what it is. I was speaking to some folks the other day and I said, you know, it's almost like bringing the young people, the kids in the car, and you tell them where you're going. And about 5 minutes into the drive, they ask you the question, are we there yet? And so when we ask the question of Canadian society, are we there yet? Are we into that fair, that just, that diverse, that inclusive Canada that we all want, where we respect each other and where we work to ensure that each individual reach their full potential in this society? The world is a messy place right now, and I'm sure you know this. But we, people of good faith, people who believe that we will see a brighter day, that we will recognize that we are, the old saying, we are our neighbor's keeper. Those of us who recognize the old saying, if it's to be, it's up to me. I need to have my sleeves rolled up, and I need to do something about this, not let others do it. And so that's the way I've lived my life, having grown up to respect, to find allies, to see what is missing in the society, to see what gaps need to be filled, and to say, maybe we can't change the direction of the wind, but maybe we could adjust our sail. We could adjust, and we can recognize the importance of the work that we have to do on a daily basis to make sure that we reach that fair, just, and equitable society that we all want. Getting into politics as the first Black woman was not easy, but at the same time, I found the allies, and I found those who had respect for my abilities and the fact that I had transferable skills that I took from the field of education that brought me to the place where I can stand up and speak to those issues that I felt important. The story of how I got Black History Month in Canada is an interesting one, because it was, again, with sheer determination that I had to speak to all 303 members of Parliament to ask for consent. I was talking to a high school group the other day, and I was telling them about I said, I was almost a stalker. I was in front of the elevator. I was by where the bus dropped people off. I was by the washroom. Any place that members of Parliament would be, I was there to ask for their support. And I had a list, and I was checking off those who were saying, yes, they will support. And one young man at the back said, why didn't you send them an email? I said that was 1995, 94, 95. We didn't have emails then. So I had to go through this, and I had to deal with a number of agents provocateurs, is what I call them. So Augustine, you want Black History Month? When are we going to have White History Month? Augustine want February as Black History Month? Who is going to come for March or April? Anything to throw me off my game. And so it was sheer perseverance, it was sheer conviction that it was right, that we need to know each other's history, and that we can be a better society if we know the history of each other's. We know the culture, and we know the ethnicity, and we know the origin, and we know the roots, and we know the causes and the effect of so many things that happen to our neighbors. And so to stand as an honorary Rotarian, and I was given honorary Rotarian status, and to know that this organization continues to grow, to blossom, continue with its ideal, both locally nationally and internationally, and to know that people around the world, when you say the word Rotary, it has meaning and it is significant that the work you do is recognized. I can go on and talk about my time as an educator, or my time as a member of parliament, as a minister of the crown, minister for multiculturalism, minister for the status of women. The couple of years I spent in the chair as this deputy speaker in the Parliament of Canada. And by the way, I was well prepared for that position because I had taught kindergarten. Where is the relevance? And my time in Ottawa, 4 elections representing the people of Etobicoke Lakeshore, who sent me term after term back to the Parliament of Canada. My colleagues in the Parliament of Canada, who elected me time and again to be chair of Women's Caucus, and the wonderful opportunities that I've had. I don't know any country in the world, and I've been to many, where I could have started as a nanny in somebody's kitchen, somebody's house, and end up in the parliament of that country and the highest place in the land in that country. So despite all the warts and all the pimples and all the bumps and the whatever else that we can see, and we're very good at spotting those things, despite all of that, we are still a great place to live, to grow, and to ensure that our young people participate in the society. And you have a responsibility, we have a responsibility. I am so saddened these days when I see and hear and read about young people involved in criminal activities, the shooting, the car thefts, all of those things that young people should not even be thinking about rather than be engaged in. And so as a society, I think that we have to focus, we have to ensure that the work we do is carried, and we also have to ensure that there is a place in all of our organizations to include our young people. I have a center that I run now. Well, I don't run it, I have an executive director and staff with about 300 young girls aged 7 to 17. A center for young women's empowerment. And we work on 4 platforms: financial literacy, STEM programs, self-improvement, and non-traditional opportunities for non-traditional jobs. And I watched the young girls come in. We've been operating for the last 10 years. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary. And I watched them come in, and I watched their enthusiasm. And I think that if we can harness that and channel that and encourage our young people, that maybe the question, are we there yet, could be maybe heard. So I thank you. I understand that I can speak for these minutes and that there is a Q&A, and you might be asked to ask a question. I have glossed over a whole lot of things. I didn't talk about the fall on your behind, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, keep on going, as is the pattern of everybody's lives. At the same time, I look always for the bright side, and I look always for, the other day I said that and someone said, I said, I look always for allies. And someone said, don't look for allies. Look for accomplices. People who would help you to drive the getaway car. So I look to find those allies, those accomplices, and those of you who are ready to drive the getaway car. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jean Augustine. Thank you so much for coming to our conference and advising us on DEI and what about your life history and how you went through all those things. Thank you so much for coming. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.